I could not believe what I was seeing. I could have filled the back of his head with 5.56, which is an absolute joke.
Well, it's not an ape, because if the Sasquatch was an ape, we would already have one.
What are these elusive hominids that stalk the wilderness? Your host, two-time witness and field researcher for more than 40 years, William Jevning. Welcome to the mystery. Welcome to Creek Devil.
Hello everyone, welcome to another edition of Creek Devil. We have Karen with us today. Karen, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How's everybody there?
Good, good. Tom, you spoke with Karen, so I'm going to have you take the lead on this.
Okay. Karen, you and I spoke, was it Sunday or Monday? It was
Monday.
Monday. It was exactly about an hour after you had a face-to-face encounter. And just to set the stage a little bit, you have a yurt in your backyard, which I think you said it's 700 feet from the house. And
about
about 500 feet, okay. And you camp out in that. And this thing was torn up. The yurt was torn up. I've got pictures of it, so I'm going to post those on the web. And you had a face-to-face encounter with this thing, and it was terrifying.
Yes.
Hey, folks, I forgot to mention that Adam's with us also, folks, so he's our good friend and filmmaker, so sorry to interrupt. Go ahead and continue, Tom.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, and Karen, if you could, and when you and I spoke, you were pretty shook up, which is understandable. I mean, when you have an encounter face-to-face with these things.
I was crying like a little girl. He's put it nicely.
Okay.
I was crying like a girl.
Yes, you were, well, for good reason. So if you could take us back, fill us in, tell us what happened, what led up to that point, and then kind of describe what happened.
Okay. So it's my own fault. Let me put that out there. Because I had seen on one of the shows that they really like peanut butter. And because of my experience in southern Ohio, I guess they noticed things, around my house. And I've been noticing grass scrunched down and just different things here at this house. And so I thought, well, if I put this peanut butter in a tree really high up, I will know once and for all that I'm not crazy or just Bigfoot crazy. So that's what I did. So the peanut butter was gone, and that happened like 3 times. I didn't realize how bad of an idea that was. So Sunday night, I put some more peanut butter out there, and I went up to the yurt. It's right next to my yurt. I don't even know why I chose that spot. I guess because there's that hole. Tom, did you see where that natural cave is? Did I send you that picture?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Do you see how close it is to my yurt? It's literally, if you came out of the hole, you could step up on my yurt porch. There's not even a porch step. I didn't know that when I put the yurt up. So anyway, I went up there to look, and the peanut butter was gone, and the yurt was torn up, and I was like, well, that's weird. Maybe he fell into it. Now, later I realized had he fallen into it, the whole yurt side would have been down. But so that's what I was thinking. And I thought, well, regardless, I'm going to take some pictures and so I can show, my husband and my kids, So I came down, I got my camera. And I do this certain whistle. Well, I think you've heard me mention that a few times. I do a very distinct whistle every time I'm out there. And I did the whistle. I went up and I took my pictures. And I turned around and stepped off of the porch and looked to my left. I don't even know if something caught my eye over in my side vision, my peripheral vision. So I looked over to my left, and there he is, standing there. And Tom, what did we say? What are 3 cars? Is that 30 feet?
About 30 feet, yeah.
What? Okay, so he was about 30 feet from me. He was just standing behind this tree, and it took me a minute to. I'm staring at this, whatever this is. I'm staring at it for a moment, and then its shoulder moved, and I saw the hair on it. That's when I saw the hair move, and my stupid self, I said, "Oh, is that you? Wow, that's you. That's really you." And his shoulder had moved again, and I took flight. I don't know. That's when I think it hit me what it was that I was looking at. That's when the hair became distinct, and I saw that he's huge, standing behind a tree. He's red in color, and I flew as fast as I could down to the house. And like I said, I just knew he was behind me. I just knew any minute this hairy hand was going to grab me, but it didn't. I got in the house, and I was just terrified, crying. I called my husband. He came home, running up there with a gun, and I was very angry about that. He didn't get to see him, but he did get to see the footprints and all of that. And then I was so upset and so angry, I just wanted to talk to you, Will, or somebody. I didn't know what to do. And so I called. I think I messaged you, Will, and then you called Tom or whatever, and Tom got a hold of me. And we talked. He calmed me down, and I sent him some pictures, and here we are today.
Karen, yeah. Well, it sounds familiar, running from this thing back to the house, thinking at any minute it's going to grab you. Will, does that ring any bells?
Yeah, just 1 or 2.
You just know it, don't you? You just know it. He's going to get you. He wasn't behind me, obviously. But I haven't seen him since. So I know it was him.
Karen,
There's no...
Yeah, and you said, you told me how tall it was, but so for the audience listening, how tall about was this thing?
I'm going to tell you what, he was every bit of 8.5, 9 foot tall. I think 9 foot tall, but I'm kind of horrible when it comes to measurements, but I showed the tree to my husband, and I said, how tall is that tree? And he said, oh, that's 9 foot easy. And he was, the very top leaves, the very top limb, was flush with his head. So he was 9 foot tall. Tom, I'll stand by the tree and send you a picture, and you guys can try to estimate how tall the tree is.
I'd love
I'm 5'2". Okay, I'll do that too, yeah.
Hey, Karen, it's Adam. Karen, I got a quick question.
Adam.
I have a quick question, Karen. Wondering if you got a good look at its face and if you could describe any expression it might have had or any details you might remember about its face.
The problem is I couldn't see his face. His hair, no. I had my contacts in. I should have been able, but his hair, I believe the wind was blowing his hair across his face because, like I said, he kind of looked like Cousin It with arms. I could not see. All I could see was the hair. Long, straggly, crappy, matted hair.
Wow.
He looks nothing like he looks nothing like the one at my parents' house. That one looks almost groomed, like he takes a bath and combs his hairy body and stuff. Honestly, he looks groomed. And this one just looked like Sigmund and the Sea Monsters. Like he had the long hair. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was just all long hair. I can't describe why. I don't know.
Now, the incident at your parents' house, that was the Ohio incident you were referring to?
Yes, this is all Ohio.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, southern Ohio.
And
Yeah.
the sighting, the recent sighting, what part of the country are you in now?
I'm 20 minutes out of Cleveland.
Okay.
I'm in Medina. It is, like, I don't know, 40 minutes from Cleveland, 40 minutes from Akron. I'm right in the middle there. It's country. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's country. We have farms and outbuildings and things, and I don't know. But we have a lot of woods. My property is fenced off by woods, I guess you would say. Is that right? Or surrounded by woods? I don't know. Like, we have a yard, and then all around the yard is forest. All of it.
Wow.
You know?
Are you near any national forests or anything, or any big?
No, these are
just there.
just like woods. Yeah.
Got it.
But here too, he's got everything he needs. We have a pond. We have a garden. We have 2 gardens. He has woods. You know, he's got everything he needs: cover, food, shelter.
Wow.
So,
Do you notice any of your food in your garden going missing, or
You know what? No. Yeah, no, he's not stealing it. But he, it could be him. I'm not certain about this. My compost pile, if I throw watermelons out there, it looks like he takes a knife and cleans that right down to that line. You know what I mean? He eats that watermelon smooth. So he takes advantage of the compost pile. But no, he's left my garden alone. He's left my kittens alone. I have little kittens out there. He leaves them alone. You know, I don't know. Somebody said it could have been a bear, but that's a very tall bear, a long-haired bear, let me tell you. I don't know.
Well, Aaron, here, that's kind of the standard. Nothing against the skeptics out there, but a lot of people that are skeptical, they have to grasp for something that they can identify, and that's the only thing they can think of. Now you had mentioned that you saw footprints. Did you, by chance, get a chance to take any pictures of those?
Yeah, I sent those, but it's the weeds. It's matted down weeds. They're not, like, we can't cast them. You know, it's like the weeds are matted down, like,
I got that.
I don't know.
Okay, gotcha.
17 inches. Yeah, and then 3.5 feet from that is another matted down place, 17.5 inches. Yeah, it's not. So, I mean, I could be mistaken by that, but it looks like footprints to me. If I'd have taken a picture of the whole line, but I'm pretty sure they're footprints, but I have to tell you, I'm guessing, but every 3.5 feet, there's that indentation, smushed down grass. So I would think that's where he was walking. Also, I forgot to tell you. Go ahead.
No. Yeah, you're doing great.
My son sleeps in the yurt sometimes. Well, did sleep in the yurt. And he woke up, he came in the house one morning and he said, Mom, is everybody okay? All the animals okay? And I said, yeah, I just fed them all. I said, why? And he said, well, the coyotes went off, and then I heard that blood-curdling scream, and I just kind of laughed. I said, oh, that's not, nobody got killed, Adam. I said, that's the beast. And he said, oh, he's like, I knew it, I thought so, because he recognized that sound from my parents' house. The sound, when the coyotes are out there howling and doing their thing, and then all of a sudden you hear that blood-curdling roar, scream, roar. You feel it in your chest.
Hear that scream? Is that a common thing, or? It's
common. It's common because we are farm country out here. There's cornfields all up and down my street. There's just everything. trying to think. There's crops, is what I'm trying to say, everywhere. And we do hear that.
Okay, so that's, I can't imagine that you're the only one who hears that, and other people have to wonder. I want to back up for a second. You mentioned something earlier that caught my attention, and that is, you say when you go out there, you would whistle. And what was the purpose of the whistle?
I guess just to let him know I was coming up there. And to be honest, I thought if I do this whistle, the same whistle every time, he's going to know that it's me, and that I mean him no harm. And this is when I thought it was okay to see them. So I thought he'll eventually, in my mind, I'm thinking eventually he'll recognize that whistle and say, oh, Karen's out. Let me go to the edge of the woods and say hi to her. That's why I thought that it could be like a form of communication with him. And I whistle like that because I don't want to sneak up on him and have him scare the hell out of me. I'm sorry, scare me.
Scare the daylights out of you.
Yeah, like he did. Exactly like he did.
Like he did.
It was not what I expected. I never expected to turn around and see that. Never.
Man.
I never expected it to be. Okay.
So just a quick question about the scream. You were about to say you never expected it to be, but I want to hear the rest of that. You never expected it to be what?
The red one. The red. I think that the reds are more aggressive than the other colors, just from what I've heard, or people telling me, things like, that thing was throwing rocks at me, and when I saw it, I said, what color? It's always red, or our house was being slapped all night, blah, 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 and then I saw something, it was red. It's always the red color when it's something aggressive or something to scare the daylights out of you, That's just my opinion. But I think that the red...
I'm going to jump in. Yeah, that's actually a really good observation. I'm gonna jump in with a thought and maybe a question for Will. But typically, the red ones are the more mature ones, and the black ones are juveniles or youngsters, and so they may not have developed the aggression or the overcome timidity and that's why I think we see a lot more activity from the older ones. Will, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, typically the younger ones are black. There can be some variation, but typically they are, and the older ones will be majority that reddish brown color. Sometimes brown, sometimes they'll stay black. On occasion, a gray or white one.
I wanted to jump in with a scream question if we have a second. Karen, you hear the scream a lot, and I'm wondering, does that, well, number one, if you've seen the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek, because in the beginning of that movie, they have the scream that's actually at the beginning of that movie is a recording of the Fouke monster from that era, and I wondered if the screams that you're hearing have any comparison points to the one from the movie. Oh, did we lose her? Did we lose me?
No, you're there, Adam. Maybe we did. Let me see. Let me see if I can get her back real quick. Sometimes that happens. So we'll try just a moment here. Sorry about that, folks.
Hi, I'm so sorry, everybody. I don't know what happened. Are you there?
Yeah, we're here. Did you hear any of my question, Karen, or?
No, not at all.
Oh,
okay, I'm sorry. Let's go back to that question.
We'll back up a minute. We'll take a peanut butter break real quick. So you were talking about the scream, and I wondered if you'd ever seen the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek, because at the beginning of that movie, they have the monster screaming. They have audio of the monster screaming, and that's actually a recording of the Fouke monster
yes.
down in that region.
And that's what we hear. That's what
So
we
is
hear.
it's the same kind of scream, or are they
Mm-hmm.
practically identical? Or
It's like a roar and a scream, and I say that because it's guttural. It's coming from his diaphragm. He's filling up those big lungs, and when he blasts that thing out, I swear you would be able to feel it if you were close enough to him. You know, it's just that I don't remember exactly what that scream sounded like at Boggy Creek, but I do know if my sisters and I watch that, all of us like get goosebumps at that scream. It's very similar. You know, that's what I think of when I hear it. Like, oh God, Shark Monster. You know.
wow. Well,
I do think of him. And it's common enough, you know, that my granddaughters heard it. My son, myself, my husband, anybody who has slept in that yurt has heard that. And you think that I would get some equipment, go buy some equipment, you know, and record this stuff. Or I had my camera in my hand when I saw him up there in the field. And all I could think of is, why are you talking to him? Just get out of there, you know? And why didn't I just raise that camera? I'll tell you why, because I'd be afraid that he would charge me. Like, what's in your hand? You know, let's see what's in that hand of yours. You know, is it a gun? Or, I don't want him to charge me. So we have cameras set up now. We have cameras, we have field cameras, all the places where the grass is laid down. And, yeah. Because we've been sleeping in the yurt, my husband and I, and the motion light came on, so he's unzipping the window, thinking, I said, you're not going to see him. You're not going to see him. That's not the purpose of the light. The purpose of the light was hopefully to scare him away from the yurt, you know. But that never worked either.
Wow.
Yeah.
Karen, I got a comment and a question. So the comment is on the camera, taking a picture of these things. And I've said this time and again with on this show and also with people I've talked to. You know, when you're in the moment and you see one of these things and everybody says, well, why didn't you take a picture? Well, I don't need a picture to prove what's in front of me. And also I'm in a kind of a fight or flee mode. That picture is for your benefit, not mine. And so that is why, right? I think that's why a lot of people, it's like I've got other things on my mind, higher priorities at the moment than taking a picture, like surviving.
Like getting away.
Yes, exactly. So really, I think that's the way it is we're just in that kind of fight or flee mode. And the camera is not a priority. Karen, one of the things that really kind of demonstrates this creature's aggression, and I will say it was aggressive, is your yurt was torn up. Yes, it was. Like rent. Can you tell us a little bit about that? About it, well, when I went down there, there, you know what, there was like little holes, beginning, and my husband said, you know, that yurt is pretty new. We take it down and put it up, you know, we only had it one summer last year, it's when we put it up, and he went to put it up this year and everything was great, and then, like, there was a little hole, you know, up really tall. And he said, that cannot be dry rotted. I don't understand. And I said, well, apparently it is, you know. Then there was another little rip, all on the roof. All this is on the roof. So then I went up there, and it's like he took a hold of the corner and tore two panels almost off. Not really. He just tore big, huge holes in them, the panels. Like, you can't sleep in the yurt anymore. You get rained on.
You can post those pictures, right, so people can see what I'm talking about? Can you post the pictures?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
that's
pictures will get posted.
Yeah. So I think the little holes were probably him maybe putting his fingers through the yurt or something. Like, I don't know, maybe curious. Like a kid, what happens if I poke this? And then when he got angry, he just said, watch this. And he tore it up. I'm upset with him over that.
Hey, Karen, I have a question about the cave, which you said was just a step away from the yurt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how big is that opening? I mean,
I have to send you a picture of that.
Okay.
It's a natural, it's all wood. It's not actually a cave. I just call it that because that's what it looks like, but it's trees. It's all trees. And I don't know if it's natural because he bent them. Something bent them. They're bent over, and it looks like a pup tent, like a dome in there. And,
okay.
you know what I mean? The trees are bent over to form a ceiling.
Oh, my goodness.
I'll take better pictures of that for you. And inside of the opening, wow, the opening, the front of it to get in is easy 6 feet. And the tallness of it, I have to bend over, and I'm only 5'2". So I think it's about 5 foot tall opening. I don't know how he gets his bigness in there, but he does. Because all that grass is laid down.
Wow.
Good. Or maybe he gets there another way.
Well, so so when you said a cave, I was thinking of a hole in the ground, but that's not the case. It's trees that are bent over that are forming kind of a dugout that he's going into and
Absolutely.
Okay. Before the yurt was there, were you noticing any activity around your property?
Yes. I noticed the weeds laying down in the backyard. I was in the laundry room one night and had a pebble thrown at the window. My husband and I were watching Bigfoot shows on TV, and I'm telling you, he can't hear. So he has the TV up so loud, and our windows were open, and all of a sudden a Diet Coke can came flinging to the window, hit the window hard. I had a softball thrown at me. And I said, I thought that the neighbors' kids were playing softball, and then somebody pointed out, well, that ball, they would have to have like professional baseball league strength, because that ball, when it hit the house, I mean, everybody heard that, it hit hard. And that was the day we put up
sounds
to
like
yurt.
it could be a good replacement for Nolan Ryan, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, right. That was, when the softball got thrown at me, was literally the day we put up the yurt. And we were having a little barbecue. And that's when he threw the softball at me.
Sort of an expression. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. He doesn't like that yurt, apparently.
It sounds like, how long ago, how long has the yurt been up there?
This summer, you mean? How long has it been up there this year? Like, we only put it up. Put it up last year, like July 31st last year, we put it up, and it stayed up until almost November, because I know I decorated it for Halloween, because we had that warm weather here in Ohio. We had like 70-some degrees in October. And so we didn't take it down until...
so it's seasonal then?
Yeah. We put it up and take it down, and take it down and put it up, yeah.
So where
and then this year... What's that?
Go ahead, Karen. Well, what I was wondering is...
Go ahead.
Okay, so real quick, I'll just ask the question. So what I was wondering was, when did what year was it when this thing threw the baseball at you, the softball?
2019. It was last summer.
Okay. Okay, so it's not been that long.
No. No.
Okay.
And then this year,
prior
the
to
year
that,
it was winter time, so also, well, that would have been 2018, is when the pillow got thrown and the Diet Coke can got thrown. And that was like winter time. No, it wasn't. It was fall because that window was open. So it was still last fall. So that would have been...
Now, Karen, you and I talked about one peculiar thing about the yurt, and that is not just the location, but what is the yurt sitting on?
Oh, a blueberry patch, which I did not know when we did that. Yes, a blueberry patch. And all the blueberries on top of the trees and everything is gone, you know. We're not picking them. You know, the neighbors aren't picking them. But they're gone. And I know that's probably why he threw the softball at me. Because he thought, you know, those are my blueberries. And you just did that. I mean, that's my guess anyway.
Sounds like, yeah. Well, it sounds like there's some objection to the location. If you were to relocate that, I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm just curious if you were to relocate it away from the, how far does the blueberry patch extend? In other words, would you be able to move it, still be able to, you know, spend your nights there, but not be on top of the blueberries?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of land here, so yeah, that wouldn't be a problem, and that's exactly what's going to happen. I'm not going to argue with this guy, you know?
Right.
You know, I'm just not. So he can have the blueberry patch.
He's got to go on a peanut butter starvation diet. No more peanut butter, right?
Yeah, he's not. Yes, absolutely, yeah. I've already put the word out about that, too. You know, I didn't even think about that. I just thought, you know, I heard he loves peanut butter. He leaves my cats alone. You know, I'm going to throw him some peanut butter out there because I love the animals so much, you know. Well, I didn't know that he was an ungrateful little crap. He's ungrateful. He's not getting any more.
Karen,
yeah, that's the end of that.
What fascinates me is your location. You're in Ohio, okay, and Ohio, Pennsylvania. Actually, I think historically have a long history of these things. And the question I want to ask you is, there's a term called the Ohio grassman. Are you familiar with that term? And
yes, I am.
If so, okay, can you elaborate on it? Like, where did it come from, and what's the lore behind that?
I don't know where the grassman came from. They call him the grassman because I believe, I could be wrong, I believe they call him the grassman because he's got the fungus or whatever, that greenish stuff that gets on his fur. Have you ever heard of that? Like some of them have bacteria or something, that greenish camouflage. He has that natural camouflage, and he is prone to, they love fields with the high weeds, you know. That's where we always see them. Anyway, you know, it's always, if it's not in the woods, you can't. People have seen them out in these fields, you know. But that's really my opinion. I'm not sure to either of those questions. I don't know. And they say that the grassman smells like skunk, and I think he's shorter than the Bigfoot. But I don't know. I've never seen one. I've never encountered one.
Okay,
you know,
so you think maybe those are two separate creatures, the grassman versus... I was always under the impression that the Ohio grassman was just another term. It was a regional term for the Bigfoot. Yeah, right.
I think that too. But when people are reporting him, you know, he's 6 foot or 7 foot tall, you know. And I know this thing I saw, oh my goodness, was so big. That's what made me cry. He was so big. And I feel like if I laid sideways on his shoulders that I would fit perfectly. But that's not true. I mean, he just has shoulders so big. Oh my God, it just looked like, I don't know, it just looked so big. So big. It just wowed me. That's all.
Right.
Still
So
can't get over
massive
it.
bulk. Could you see his arms?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Yep, I saw that.
tell me a little bit. Were they massive, or tell me a little bit about the arms and the hands if you saw those?
The arms were, yeah, they were long and muscular, really muscular. I mean, this was a big boy. I say it's a boy. It could have been a big girl. I don't know. But I did not notice breasts. So I'm going to just say boy. It's just huge. And his arms were down on his side. They were just long. And I noticed them because, like I said, the wind, or he moved his shoulder or something. But where his hand was bulkier, you know. And then as I looked down, you know, it had to be the end of his hand and the beginning of, you know, what I could see of the leg. You know what I'm trying to say?
No, yeah, absolutely. And it was standing kind of behind this tree, right? The little tree,
Yeah.
that 9-foot tree that you're talking about. Okay.
Yes.
So you
And
could
it's a very
see,
thin, the tree is it's new. It's the trunk of the tree is probably 6 inches in diameter. It's a brand new maple tree. So it's tall, but the trunk is very small, and the limbs are super thin. So it was very easy to see him clearly behind that tree.
Oh. Karen, did you get a look at his feet for any details noticed there? No? Okay.
No, he was, you know, in the grass. Too far away from me.
Gotcha.
But I don't know what I would do if I ever saw him again. I don't know, because I don't know his temperament. The one at my mom's doesn't really frighten me as much, you know. But when I saw that this one was red, and everything I've heard and read about the red ones, I just thought, oh, it figures. It just figures. You know, it couldn't be like the gentle giant, you know. That's when I got really scared. But he's never screamed at me. He's never, like, yelled at me, you know? So I don't know.
It sounds like the only activity you guys do in the evening that's maybe a little bit off schedule is sleeping in the yurt, as far as you know what I've heard. So maybe his normal routine is he's nocturnal and he's all over your property at night when you guys aren't around, and during the day, you know, you're all over your property when he's not around or he's close enough to stay out of sight, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
And, interesting.
And we crossed paths. Yes.
Quick question here. Are there other creatures in your area, and have you talked to anybody? Are there other individuals out there that are seeing these things?
The Bigfoots, I've talked to people who've seen them, yeah. There was a young man who worked at, it's called MTD, they make lawnmowers and things, and his job was to work third shift and test lawnmowers as they came off the line, you know, just like a couple of them. And so he was mowing, you know, testing out the lawnmower, and he said he came by this pavilion, and part of it was blacked out. Like, you could see the street light shining through the pavilion, except for this one corner of it. So he thought that was odd, and when he had to turn, his headlights hit it, and he said he just saw bulk and hair. So I guess he went around the other way and kind of up a hill so he could tilt the headlights up and saw the eye shine. And he said he almost jumped off with the lawnmower and ran because he thought he could get away faster. His name is Chris, and he almost quit his job, literally. He wrote the letter to put his 2 weeks in, but he wouldn't hand in the letter because he was afraid of ridicule. Just, say I'm leaving my job because, I think I saw a Bigfoot on the property. So there's him. I know a couple people that were fishing and heard the wood knocks and the whistles out at Spencer Lake. There was another person who saw at the MTD where that Chris guy saw something. Another young man named Sean. They were four-wheeling in the woods, and he saw one. He looked at his face. And then he told all the guys, and they were going to try to chase it with the four-wheelers, but Sean left the group and came home. It terrified him like that. So people are seeing them. They are, and they're definitely hearing them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to comment for just a moment on the reaction that people get. The gentleman, his name was Chris, that was mowing the lawn, and he sees one of these things in the headlights of the lawnmower, and he was thinking about quitting. We hear that a lot. I mean, quite a bit with people in their occupation. There was a logger in Northern California that had one of these things come out and throw a tree at his truck. Oh. And when the guy got back, that was it. He just walked and said, I'm done with this.
Oh, yeah. I would. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There was and going all the way back to the Happy Camp days, I have a relative that his father worked in that area, and they had encountered these things, and a lot of the employees were the Native Americans, and they just walked away and said, that's it, not coming back. So
he's terrifying.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to do anything to make you care.
No, they don't.
You know what I mean?
All to do is see them. I know exactly what you mean. I've never met anybody who's actually seen one of these things that came back and said, oh my gosh, that was the most wonderful thing. I can't wait to do it again.
Not me. I'm going to bake him some cookies. Nope. Nope. It's changed my life. This Bigfoot thing has changed my life. I go anywhere unless I'm in the city. I will not go outside at night. My husband literally has to walk out. If my car, where I park my car, is probably 12 feet from my front door. But he can't watch me through the window. He has to come out to the car and get me. It's changed my life. I don't do anything outside at night, and I certainly don't do anything alone out at night. Unless I'm in the city, you won't see me outside. Everybody wants to have bonfires. Yes. Yeah, I'm not doing it.
I'm with you.
I'm not going out there. Nope. Thank you anyway. But he's changed my life. I will not be sleeping in the yurt for the rest of this year. That's for sure. It bothers me, but then again, I mean, you got to coexist somehow.
Oh yeah. Well, I got a quick question, Karen. What's your husband's take on all this business? Is he on the same page with you? Or?
Yes. At first, he was just kind of pacifying me. He knew that I really believed in Bigfoot, and he wouldn't dare make fun of me. And he doesn't let people make fun of me. He'll tell people, hey, she takes that real serious. And I believe her because of how serious she is about him. And then he didn't get to see the red one the other day. He did go up there and try to see him. But he has seen all the evidence, and he's a hunter and a tracker, and he's told me, he's like, yeah, you've got something out here, stuff I've never seen before. So he's definitely on the page with me. He wants to see one so bad, and I keep trying to tell him, no, you don't. But,
Karen, I got a question. Your backyard, I'm a little bit curious. So where this tree line is, where you saw this thing, What's
Mhm.
beyond that? Is it kind of a forested area? Is there a green belt? Is there some way for this thing to travel? Is there some woods back there where it can travel sort of concealed?
Mhm. It's all woods, and they go for miles.
Okay.
They go for miles and miles. Yes. Like the street over, like I said, we're in the country, so a country block can take you 20 minutes to get around. You know, the streets are far apart, but the street that behind us, it's called let's see, there's Stone Road, and that one's called oh my goodness. Anyway, Keller.
Well, it's better. Well, that's better. We don't want to tell people where it's at, but you know, and I agree. A country mile is not a city mile.
Right, and those trees go clear back to that street, so they go for miles.
If anybody goes back there looking for this thing, be sure and tell them to take a ham sandwich with them so I can toss it at the creature and run.
Take peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Or watermelon. He loves watermelon.
Oh,
but yeah, that's what happened.
Karen, is there like a creek or a natural spring that's like, you know, in the vicinity of your property or that you might know of that's around there?
Yes, we have a pond. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And it's spring fed.
Spring-fed pond. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
He's got everything he wants.
Sure does.
Yes, he does.
Oh, you know, I wonder if there'd be any prints by your pond, you know?
That, too, is grown up, though. It's all...
Oh, okay.
It is so thick. You couldn't walk. I mean, you can get to the pond, but it is so thick. I don't know. There's like ivy or something. I don't know what's there besides the trees, but you cannot see in it. It's so thick. Like maybe it's laurel or I don't know. But it's really overgrown. The woods are really, really overgrown. Do you know what I mean? Like
I do.
Yeah, they're whatever the stuff is blocks your way of getting into the woods. He has no problems, but I do.
Sure.
Trying to get in there. Yeah.
Karen, I got a question.
Okay.
So probably most of the trees out there in Ohio, I imagine in your property, I'm just going to guess, you have a lot of deciduous. You know, you're going to have your oaks and your poplars and maples and that sort of thing. So when the leaves fall and, you know, fall, autumn, and then winter comes on, do you still hear the sounds, the screams and the roars or anything like that during the wintertime?
No. It's as if he packs his bags and goes away. And then he doesn't come back right away. Or, you know, it takes a while for me to start noticing the grass being tramped down and to get that feeling like I'm being watched. You know, that takes a little while in the spring. But then when it happens, it's almost like I know when he's back. Because then all of a sudden you go outside, you feel like you're being watched again. You know, the cats act funny when they go outside to use the bathroom. The dogs act funny when they go outside to use the bathroom. Yep, he's back. I don't know where he goes.
How do the dogs act funny? What are the dogs doing when they...
Like, well, the one is a little mini pincher. So she's a little dog and very friendly. But when she goes out to use the bathroom, she'll like start to run out the door and then hit the jammers and look over to the right. Everybody looks to the right when they go out. They always stop, look to the right, and then they're kind of like, oh, okay, it's okay, and then they'll go do their business, or they'll turn around and come back in. So even
what
the cat
is to the right? Okay.
That's
too.
some more. Yeah, that's some more trees right off of my porch, and that's where my compost pile is, and that's where the matted down grass is. So I think he sleeps there.
Okay. What's to the
Or
left?
if he doesn't sleep in his the driveway, my car. And,
Okay.
just the driveway.
Gotcha. All right. So there's something off to the right that catches their attention. Interesting.
Yes, every night. Every night, yeah.
Wow. Karen, do you have cameras aiming in that direction? Or you had mentioned you put some cameras up. I'm wondering if they're looking at you.
I don't know. That's a question I'll have to ask my husband and get back to you on. I would imagine, because I asked him, I told him I need a camera here, I need a camera here, and that was one of the places I told him I would really like a camera. So,
nice.
I hope so.
Yeah.
We were going to put one in the yurt, but now he foiled our plans.
I don't know.
Karen, I just had an idea.
What's your idea?
I don't know if it's a good idea, but I'll run it by you. Will, you can nix this idea if you don't think it's good. Because these things are probably, I think, quite often they know where cameras are and they'll avoid them. However, he does like peanut butter. You could put peanut butter in the same peanut butter place, but put a camera at it, and then he's got a dilemma. Do I get the peanut butter and go on camera or not?
And the peanut butter will win.
Oh, boy.
There you go. Then you get a picture.
I like that idea. Will, what are your thoughts?
Well, you could give it a shot. I'm not optimistic, but you can try it.
Okay. Well, here's the other thing. I don't give him peanut butter every day. I was just throwing a jar out there when I thought about it, Oh, I guess I'll get him some peanut butter today. So, just because I haven't given him any peanut butter since Monday, that's not going to create a problem, when I put the peanut butter out there with the trail cam, he'll just think, oh, finally, she gave me some peanut butter. You know what I mean? He won't know that he's being tricked. I hope.
Gotcha. Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Well, he'll have to make a choice. Right?
That is really good, Tom. He will have to make a choice.
Yeah.
And I hope he chooses peanut butter.
I do too.
He'll have to scratch in his fuzzy head. What do I do? But I will. I'll do that. Also, I told my husband, you could put the cameras inside the house, in a window. That way he can't destroy it, because I know they love to destroy cameras. That's a favorite pastime of theirs, I hear.
Oh.
So we were going to put one, like I said, in the yurt. But yes, I am, because I really want these pictures.
That idea, yes. Right?
Or even on the roof by the chimney and aim it down. I do. I got some good spots.
Heartbeat if he wants to.
Oh, God, no. But I just thought we can just aim it down, and I felt like we'd get a pretty good picture, a pretty clear picture, if we had the camera on the roof aiming toward there's a moth buzzing me right now, and he's huge. We'd get a pretty good picture if it was aiming down to the yard, off the roof, I think.
You could, and if you really wanted to make it a double up on the dilemma aspect, 2 jars of peanut butter.
Yes. Yes. Like one higher and one lower, maybe?
Well,
temptation,
you know what,
yeah.
Well, think about this though. You strongly suspect he's eating the watermelon rinds out of your pile, right? Your compost pile. If you had a camera like inside your house that was just looking out the window at that particular zone, at that particular area, and you just do what you normally do, and you leave that. It's a 24-hour surveillance camera, right? So it just constantly records, I have one like that for my apartment. They're that's all reasonable. That technology's there. It's not expensive. But, that way you don't have to encourage him with peanut butter, which might be a think twice idea, but he's already coming around to get what you normally throw into your compost pile.
Mm-hmm.
So you might catch him right there. You just have to remember to, when you notice the compost pile's been disturbed, is to go do the playback on your security camera and just, see if you've got a big fuzzy friend excavating.
Oh gosh. I'm certain of that. Just the way the grass is matted down and just the signs, that I've seen before. And, I wish I could get some snowy footprints, but, wasn't that you that said they use the trees in the wintertime?
They will sometimes.
Somebody told me that on the show, Jeremiah and myself, and Lord, Don is the one that told me that. And I was just like, oh, please don't tell me stuff like that. I feel like I've got to look over my shoulder, and now I've got to look up, too,
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
Karen,
That's what happened. Okay.
Okay, and I think we sort of touched on this, but I just wanted to get a little bit of clarification. How long has this been going on? How long have you had a suspicion that it's been out there, and how long have you had pretty reasonable evidence that this thing has been on your property?
I suspected it really about 2.5 years ago, and I started getting evidence about 2 years ago. I really started looking, the first thing I noticed was the grass trampled down by the compost pile. That's the first thing I noticed, and I thought, here we go again. So I walked around the house, and of course the grass is only trampled down where there's a window or a door that he can see into. So that's when I just knew, unless it's a peeping Tom, and I think he would be eaten by a dog if it was a human, So
Sure.
one of them would get him. That's when I noted, that's when I said, yep, here we go again. So
prior to 2.5 years ago,
but
nothing, say 3 years ago, really nothing going on, or?
No, not. I mean, it probably was, but I was trying to ignore it because I know that people think that I'm just crazy. I know they do. Until now, so I would just try to ignore the things myself. Like I'm not really seeing that, or I know that looks like it could be from a creature, but surely it isn't. So I was noticing things as soon as we moved in. That was about 3 years ago. But nothing like now that I really start looking around. The more you look, the more you see. So the strong evidence.
You said other people are, have seen these things. Have you talked to your neighbors?
Mm-hmm.
Any of your neighbors mention anything, or anybody else mention anything besides your mom's house? Okay.
But I've already thought of that. I thought I'm going to ask them, like the neighbors, there's my house and then my yurt, some woods there, and then another house, directly behind those woods. I want to talk to those people because if he's on my property, if he walks around the tree, now he's on their property. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm going to ask them what they know about this.
Might see if anything's digging in their compost piles, just kind of start softly, kind of back into it.
Yes. And I must tell you that while I'm sitting here, my window's open, my light is on, and the motion light just came on outside. Wow. And I don't see, I don't have a flashlight up here. I wish I had a flashlight to just shine out there right this instant, just to see You know, I've been hearing little things. Internet motion light just came on. It's still on. But it's pitch black out there, so... And if I use the flashlight on my phone, I'm going to lose you.
I don't do that.
But now that, if that would... I'm going to start investigating that. And let me tell you, I will get pictures from... You know what I mean? I will... I feel safe, obviously, in my home. And if he's going to be creeping by that tree, I'll be creeping him in my bedroom window.
Well, you know, Karen, put your phone on record just so you're taking video, and then just so whatever happens, he freaks you out, he shows up, he pops up in front, whatever unexpected thing happens, your camera's rolling. You don't have to use your brain and press buttons. It'll just be recording, and so
right.
you'll be there no matter what happens. You know.
Yes, I'm going to. Okay. Ooh, sorry everybody. Did you guys hear that?
No.
Are you there? Okay. Oh, good. I thought I lost you
No,
again.
didn't hear a thing.
Okay. No. I'm going to slip down here and get a flashlight, too. That'd be so great if I could just get a picture of him for you guys right now. See, I have a window. There's my bedroom with the window facing the front. When I walk down the hall, at the end of the hall, there's a window that faces the backyard and my compost pile. So I have really good lookout spots, you know?
That's great.
So I'm going to get a...
Well, Karen, listen, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead. I want to thank you. And Adam, as always, we appreciate having you on.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. I love
any final thoughts? Any questions or thoughts from anybody?
I just wanted to say
Not
thank
me.
you, Karen.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys. And I appreciate, thank you very much for when it happened and I was so upset. Will and Tom, thanks for the support, the emotional support, because I needed you guys. I really did.
And if more happens,
I really appreciate it.
If more happens, feel free to contact us.
Yeah, now I'm educated on this a little. I'm going to try to be more calm, and I'm going to get the GoPro, Will, and every time I go out my door, that GoPro will be on me.
Okay, very good.
You know?
Yeah.
So, hopefully soon, I'll have some stuff. Okay?
All right, Karen, thank you.
Karen,
You have a
stay
great
safe.
night.
Thank you, you guys, too. Thank you very much. Good night.
Welcome back from the break, everyone. We're going to do the Q&A today and whatever discussion we decide we're going to do. So, fellas, I'm not sure what kind of questions we have or which direction we're going to go. It's always a surprise. So,
okay, I guess I can start.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just wondering about any reports of them beating their chests, and how many of you have you gotten from that perspective, and if so, why do they do this?
You know, that's a good question. We actually did get a recording from a guy in Alaska, I don't know, a couple months ago, wasn't it, Tom? 2-3 months ago?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
And it's very interesting. I mean, it sounds exactly like a gorilla beating its chest, but it's in Alaska. I don't want to say the guy's name or anything because we don't have his permission to use that, but you know, so that's a good example. It's probably the only one I've heard of, but well, no, let me take that back. I think I have a couple other people who have mentioned hearing something like that. It's not often, but apparently it is something they do, and why they do it, I don't know. Could be for very similar reasons that gorillas do it.
Right, because I've read that gorillas do it maybe sometimes as a taunt or a challenge to a rival, a male rival, but also as a way to attract females. So
sure,
I guess it's kind of speculation.
Yeah, it's too bad we can't use the recording on the website, folks, because it's really interesting. I mean, it's very, very clear as to what it is.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And I've heard that just, infrequently, but I've heard it a couple of times that people mentioned they're out in the woods and they heard their chest beating.
I mean, I guess we could probably email the gentleman who has the recording and ask his permission. I don't know if he'd give it to us or not, but we could certainly ask him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got a question regarding and this is a personal question of mine regarding centuries, the age of the centuries. I've heard that the centuries oftentimes are left behind to keep an eye on an area. And the question I have is, do we have any information or any speculation that they may be accompanied by, other members of the family or the group?
Well, I think it depends on how large the group is, for one. And they're not left behind. They're, they might be a little farther out, than, say, where the main group is feeding or whatever. But the group's not going to just leave them in that area. When they move on, the sentry will go also. And it's usually the younger ones, the juvenile members, probably what we would equate to teenage years, maybe a little bit older.
Okay. And as kind of a follow-up, do you think the group, maybe later in the evening, may try to communicate with the sentry, vocalize and say, hey, what's, whatever, why ever they vocalize, but just to make sure it's still there?
Yeah, I'm sure they do. We hear that occasionally. I've heard things in areas where, and especially this when, let's say you hear a vocalization and then you hear other vocals quite a ways in the distance. That could be a good example of what you're saying.
Okay.
Will, here's another question. Of the witnesses that you've talked to, how many of them had a sighting? I guess it wouldn't be a vicious encounter or anything like that, but how many of them had a sighting like years before and didn't know what the creature was or didn't believe in it? And now, years later, after listening to shows like ours, they come forward and they say, hey, you know what? I think what I saw was what you guys would call a Sasquatch.
I don't know what the percentage or numbers would be, but it's more and more. And I can even tell you my own experience when I was a kid. And I've mentioned it on the show before, where there were a couple incidents. One was the rock quarry monster, the kid that come up to our house at night and was scared to death and claimed he saw this creature coming after him. And the other time when our cattle were in the barn at the time of day they shouldn't have been there, and were very frightened, and we all saw this something was viciously thrashing the brush at the nearest tree line. We couldn't see what was doing it, but it was very thick in there, so you wouldn't have seen it, what was there anyway, unless it was actually outside of the tree line. So, looking back on it after what I'd seen a few years later, it was pretty easy to make the connection.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to pull a question that came up a few weeks ago about the color of their coats and about it maybe changing over time, because he had a personal example. I think he was talking about his horses, and he said that, yeah, they change color as they get older. And as this relates to Sasquatch, do you think that, because he mentioned that at a young age they were blacker, and then they changed to a lighter color, and then one example was it went, in one case it went back and forth. But do you think that maybe as juveniles, when they're young, Sasquatches are maybe blacker in color, and then as they get older, they become more cinnamon red?
Yeah, all the reports we get of the juveniles, I can't recall any that were any color other than black, and that's probably nature's way of camouflaging them, because if they're on the ground in forest situations, especially in shaded areas, the black color is going to make them blend in better. And as they mature, probably 70% or more of the reports, they're the cinnamon brown color, but they also can be black or brown, sometimes gray or white.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would theorize that the sightings of the white ones are perhaps older in But at the same time, maybe that's just speculation. We don't know. So you've never had any reports of a white juvenile?
No, I've never heard of one.
Okay.
Yeah, all the ones I've heard of were black.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's another question too. And once again, this is, you might not have an answer for this, but since they do seem to stalk or have an interest in children and women, perhaps because they're most vulnerable, do you speculate that most sightings or encounters out there are from children and women, or I shouldn't say reported necessarily, but the sightings that occur from children and women?
No, they're actually kind of across the board. Oftentimes they are, but also by men also. I mean, I don't think there's any...
they don't discriminate.
Yeah, I mean, well, you got to remember when they're being seen, it's a microscopic view in time of what is going on throughout the day. You're only going to see something for a few moments most often. 5-10 minutes tops. If they're in a place, for a prolonged period, that's usually the prolonged period. So, which would be an eternity if you're looking out the window watching one of these things doing whatever it's doing. But when it comes to if they're in kind of a stalking behavior, it's going to be very short time periods. So you don't know what they're doing the rest of the day. So for whoever sees them, it just happens to be whoever is there and observes that behavior. So does it mean that they're being seen more often by women and children when their stalking is going on? We have no data on that. So that's one of those questions that's totally up in the air.
Mm-hmm. Okay, here's another question. How many hair samples do you have? And actually, this is a two-part question.
Oh boy, I don't have a count. I've had quite a few over the years. Not particularly interested in hair per se anymore because, I don't have the money to spend, on DNA tests, which don't yield a whole lot anyway for the amount of money you spend. They're very expensive. Those tests, they can be up in the range of around $40,000. So, I don't need $40,000 to spend $40,000 for some lab to tell me unknown primate. What's it gonna get me? Virtually nothing. I mean, if I know what it is, that's fine. That's all I need to know, based on the circumstances of where it was found. If there was a Sasquatch there, left some hair in a fence that it was crossing, I don't need to spend $40,000 for somebody to tell me that's an unknown primate. I already know that. And I don't need to utilize that to go out and try to prove it to anyone else, because what's the point? They're not going to believe it anyway.
Yeah. And where are most hair samples found? Is it barbed wire fences, or is it out in the woods?
I would say on trees mostly. It's most of the place I found them. Usually when they're doing something to a tree, if they're breaking in or twisting or whatever, usually they don't just go out and rub up against one. If they rub up on something, it's on purpose. So you might find hair in a situation like that, but they're not like dogs that shed, so they're not going to leave a whole lot behind.
Mm-hmm. About footprints, do you find that they're easier to discern than other animals just because they're deeper, right? Because of the sheer weight of the creature. So is this like one of the determining factors like when you decide if you're finding a bear print or a Sasquatch? I mean, you would know the difference anyways, but just in general, would a researcher be able to maybe discern the difference between a bear print and a Sasquatch, just how deep it is into the surface?
Well, there's a huge difference between bear tracks and Sasquatch tracks. I mean, I think we've got that actually on the website, some examples. If you knew what you were looking at, you would never, ever mistake the two. There just aren't enough similarities. And we're not even talking about size. We're just talking about the physical structure. So, and the fact that with bear tracks, you find a lot of them in a line of tracks, and they're all close together. You see the front foot and then the back foot, and they're all very close, within a foot or so of one another. whereas Sasquatch tracks are very human in shape. They're large. The spacing is, anywhere from 40 to 60 inches between them. So they're completely different. And there's many other, physical characteristics we could discuss, but we've done that, and it's on the website.
I'm going to jump in. And also, not only the bear tracks, but sighting a bear. I was out 2 weeks ago and saw a bear, kind of galoping across the road. And I was actually in an area, you're just galoping across the road, being a bear. And it was actually it's kind of interesting because they're very clean animals for the most part. They have a really nice shiny coat. But you can't, not for a second, could you really confuse that with a Bigfoot? Even if it was standing up on its hind legs, it's just it's not just the tracks.
The animal shape is different, very different, but we're talking tracks. So if we're talking tracks, then extreme differences. Even if there's an overlap footprint, and I went out and cast one of these a number of years ago just to have one, for the sake of conversation, and there were actually 3 bare footprints in it, 2 hind feet and a front foot, and the overall length of this impression was 17 inches, but you compare that to a 17-inch Sasquatch track, you would never confuse it. And especially, again, going back in a line of bear tracks, you see lots of hind and front feet, and they're all very close together because bears' legs aren't really that long, and they're not going to have a long stride between them, whereas a Sasquatch is completely different.
Yeah, and I think I really think that the whole argument that, oh my gosh, what you saw was just the overlapping bear prints is really kind of
it's ridiculous.
An argument. It's ridiculous.
It's an argument. It's an argument made by somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about.
Right, or somebody who just wants to scoff and debunk.
Yeah, exactly. They're just stirring the pot, hoping that knowledgeable people won't call them on that. If I see somebody making that comment, I'm going to call them on it and show them exactly the differences.
Yes, yeah. We got a guy here. He wants to know, are there Sasquatch in Africa or anywhere that are in the same area as elephants? And if so, do the two of them interfere? Do they bother each other?
I seem to recall some kind of report or two from that region of something similar to being there. I wouldn't think they would interfere with one another. I mean, animals do what they do in their environment, and most of the time they don't bother one another, especially large ones.
Right. I don't know what really preys on an adult elephant anyway. I mean, I don't know enough about them, but
yeah, no, I something like these wouldn't, I'm sure. I mean, archaic humans hunted, mastodons and things, but that's a whole different subject altogether. But these things, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point. I don't know. Well, we don't know, but I don't think these things really resort to tool use in their hunting. Maybe they do. Maybe they use rocks. Who knows? Yeah,
it's hard telling. We don't really know much about.
And those who do, they only know for about a second.
Yeah. Tom, you actually took one of my questions that I had about tool use, and obviously, we know that they throw rocks. Probably not necessarily at prey, although maybe, but I mean, they could probably just, use their hands and break their necks. But hypothetically, let's say, because they do wander into, perhaps sheds sometimes, or sometimes people have tools laying out. Do you think that they would maybe confiscate, like, an axe that they came across or something like that, or a hammer, something like that?
Well, we know they do take human-made objects on occasion. I'm sure it's not to utilize as the tool it's intended to be, but for whatever reason, they seem to be kleptomaniacs and take things.
Okay, switching
Brian,
subjects.
that's a good question.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Brian. No, I was just going to comment. I'd say that's an interesting speculation. And I'm really glad that we don't have axe-murdering Sasquatch out there as far as we know.
Now, the things we do know, I mean, them manipulating objects in their environment is a form of tool use. So when they stack rocks, break trees, anything along those kinds of lines is a form of tool use. So they do those kinds of things and probably more things that we're not aware of. It would be things that blend into the background that we simply would just think are natural effects. And oftentimes what's done out in nature is an effect of natural processes. So, like with the broken trees that I first discovered back in 1991, it was very obvious that was not a natural process or done by any other animal. So for me, when I look at those kind of things, they have to sort of slap me across the head and be that obvious. I don't look at subtle things as much because it's very easy to say, well, that was done by a storm or disease or age or what have you. You look kind of silly if you go jumping to all sorts of conclusions. It's got to be pretty obvious at this stage in the whole situation with these creatures. So that's my position on it anyway.
Okay, yes. Switching topics a little bit, because there have been reports of them, going through dumpsters and garbage cans and just eating anything, as we've talked about. Do you think that by doing that, though, and this might sound like a weird question, but could they possibly get sick by doing that? I mean, like food poisoning, like a human would?
I guess it would depend on what they ate, but as far as I know, I don't know of any situations where they've actually gotten sick by eating stuff out of a dumpster. They seem to enjoy picking through garbage.
Yeah. Interesting, yeah.
Apparently we have lots of goodies that we throw away.
Well, and you think about alley cats that go through dumpsters. I mean, they eat some pretty rotten stuff in there, and they seem to, they are cats, but
so do other animals. There's lots of animals that will go through human garbage and don't seem to have any trouble with it.
Yeah, we're the ones who would have issues with it.
Yeah, our digestive systems are pretty finicky.
Mine's pretty finicky even before I get, just smelling it. I'm like, I'm out of here. Switching gears a little bit here. We got a really good question from one of our listeners, and he says, okay, during one of our recent postings, we talked about the 18th century French tale of, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce this, but there was a monster that actually had
the Beast of Jevning.
That's the one, yes, and it was an ongoing situation for I think like 2 or 3 years. So, and there's been other monster stories in Europe, and so he's moving to the Old English poem of Beowulf and the monster Grendel. Mm-hmm. Do we have any stories of these things taking place in Scandinavian? Is there anything in the Scandinavian lore that would be attributed to Bigfoot? And do we think there's still creatures in Scandinavia?
Well, we have a lady who lives in Norway who's actually part of the JRG group, and she sent me a couple of pieces of information from Scandinavian lore, that two creatures actually that were probably these creatures. One was the stone giants, and the other one was, I'm trying to think, it was in one of the Disney cartoons, the frost giants. Those two are these creatures. In Central Europe, it's trolls, ogres. All those terms refer to these creatures. And when you think about,
so there was a time when Europe they were prevalent in Europe.
Absolutely, and in Eastern Europe, I've had modern, accounts sent to me where people had gone into forests, in former Soviet bloc countries, Romania and places like that, where they've encountered these creatures.
Interesting. So I'm going to pull a question from Mary from YouTube. She wants to know what your thoughts are about a young Bigfoot. When they reach puberty, do they leave their family for a mate? And do you believe that they bring their mates back to their family?
Well, we don't have a lot of information about that particular area. It looks like that, and I'll give you an example from my own study, of the Southwest Washington region for a dozen years. There are three main groups in that area, and I've mentioned this before, where there are the two groups. One I call the Mount St. Helens South group, and then there's another one east of there, a number of miles, and those two groups don't really interact with each other. But there's a group of three, or there was a group of three males. I don't know if they are still in that area or not, but those three males would stay together, and occasionally one or two of those would go and spend time with one group or the other, probably for mating. So the juveniles probably, if they don't stay in the group, they might go out, and be, a group of rogue males. We'll just call them rogue males. And for however that works, we don't know, but it could be that we had an example of a situation reported not long ago that 4 males, apparently younger males, were attacking a family, and that could have been to gain status, for breeding purposes. Maybe they had to raise their status within, to demonstrate to the group that, they were worth mating privileges. We don't know, but it should be very similar to what other primates do.
Okay, and I've got a question on our YouTube channel, and this is an excellent question. This is for everybody out there. This is from Linda, and we hear from Linda quite a bit. Will, where do I go to ask questions?
Oh, go to creekdevil.com. And Tom, you can
go to
address
Devil.
that.
Yeah, it's actually, now here's 2 things. One, you can post questions in the comments section on the video, and we try to get to those. Another really excellent way to make sure we get your questions is questions@creekdevil.com. So email address is just questions, plural, @creekdevil.com.
Yeah, and on that note too, somebody, I think this is from YouTube, or maybe this is my own question, but when people have an encounter, and let's say that it's vicious, but it's not, and it's threatening, but it's not fatal. Of course, there could be fatal ones out there too. But when somebody has like a violent encounter, but it doesn't end in them being a big sack lunch or a Happy Meal, do you think that it's kind of a scare tactic, or do you think it's more about them protecting their young?
Again, it depends on the larger circumstances that are going on. If we only see, again, a few moments of what's going on in a larger situation, could be either or something entirely different. It's unknown unless you have more information. Typically, they're territorial kinds of situations. It depends on their behavior.
Okay. Also, this is kind of actually two YouTubers have kind of the same question, and this is from Robert, and it's kind of a follow-up with one from June. But Robert says, one question I've been thinking about is why are we not finding many things that indicate a nesting place or something like a home for Sasquatch that make like a structure to sleep inside? And June asked a very similar question. She says, do you think that Sasquatch might sometimes use abandoned buildings as shelters? Or like maybe she says that there's an old barn in the woods not far from her house, and but you can't get down there. But to maybe investigate, I guess the owner is not letting them go down there. But yeah. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there isn't really any evidence showing that they have the need for shelters. Now, there may be a few people out there that would make those claims, but I've done this for almost 50 years now, and I haven't seen anything. They're on the move. If they do create any kind of bedding, they don't leave it, for humans to find. They'll tear it apart. I do have some photographs of examples of things. I'm not going to show right now because I'm working on another project where I will possibly show those down the road, but a book project. But I do know some things that they do make, but they don't leave them. They're not just going to leave things out there. They're very wary of any threats or dangers to them. So leaving objects that humans will find is very dangerous to them, because we will go and investigate that stuff, and that could be very detrimental to them, and they know that.
I'm just going to jump in real quick. Brian, I love the the question about using a barn, and not that it used the barn for shelter, but it reminds me of the TW story, and I love it.
Yeah.
The one I'm talking about, where it goes into the barn and gets zapped.
Well, now they might go into. Now it doesn't mean they won't go into structures, but it's not going to be for shelter.
Right.
They might be just curious, going to see what's in there. Who knows? But there's no evidence they use anything like that for shelters. They seem to be very adapted to their environments, so they're not really bothered by bad weather.
Yeah, that was the TW story. So I don't know the episode off the top of my head.
With the Apache gentleman, who thought it was one of his buddies sneaking up on him to play a prank, and he zapped him with a cattle prod.
Right? And that's when the rodeo started.
Yeah, right.
But, it does bring up kind of an interesting question, though, and that is, what was the purpose for going in the barn in the first place?
Yeah,
we won't know.
Well, that is a good point. I mean, we don't know. And again, without knowing a wider context to what's going on now, it could have been because there were sick cattle in there. Maybe that was an easy picking situation. Maybe it was, going up, checking the loft because it knew a man was there. It's just very difficult to tell.
Yeah,
I'm sure it was watching that situation before it ever considered approaching the barn.
I bet it had no idea that it was about what was going to happen to it.
And it did throw it into an immediate rage. Where it tried to get him. He ended up jumping out of the window and landing on the ground to run to escape, and it tore the barn up and killed the sick cattle that were in there.
Yeah, and that underscores what we've said all along. These things are very, very temperamental.
Yes, very much so.
Will, here's a question from another YouTuber, and I don't know his or her name because the name it wasn't like a real name. It was just kind of a code name.
Screen name.
Yeah, screen name. And this is a very, respectfully, it's kind of an attack question, but it's very respectful. He or she loves the show, but he just wants to know, okay, I'm wondering if Mr. Jevning's opinion of Dogman has changed, because his dismissal of its existence and the belief that a large number of eyewitnesses are mistaken in what they are seeing is the same type of attitude that is always aimed at anyone that has a Bigfoot or Sasquatch sighting. It just seems that he or she just wants to know what you think about that, about the dismissal of Dogman when you have all these eyewitnesses.
I haven't changed my opinion at all. When you look at the Sasquatch, it fits very nicely into the anthropoid fossil record, or not fossil record necessarily, but, well, it would be. I mean, there's things in there that our anthropologist John talked about that could very well be, ancestors of these creatures. And there were, actually sent Tom a number of videos this morning talking about, what makes a hominid versus hominid. And I've even seen people make comments that, it sort of winds them out that saying the Sasquatch is a primate, and that's because people don't understand those distinctions, what classifies something in different categories. Anything that has a design very similar to ours would be a primate in the animal kingdom. So these things are a primate. That's a large on the upper levels of classification. But and maybe we should post a link to some of those videos on the website, Tom, because they're very informative and they tell people. And there's this newer classification where they classify something as a hominid, which is what they used to do, and now they use the term hominin, which are humans that are, we've separated away from the rest of the hominids. So I'm not sure where exactly I was going with all that, but these creatures are a hominid. They're a primate, separated, different than us. So, this creature fits very clearly in with all the characteristics and behaviors in with other hominids, whereas something like a dogman is completely ridiculous. It's biologically impossible. I think some people are just predisposed to, the whole werewolf notion. And there is a particular type of Sasquatch that has that elongated face, which is a more archaic simian face like a baboon has. And in one of those videos, it actually talks about, those features. So, but for a canine to be walking around on two legs, no, sorry, folks, I'm just not buying that.
What it does do is it it draws internet attention. And, here's the other thing with just my thoughts on Dogman. I can't find any information on it going back much further than a few years. It almost seems like it's a recent creation, a recent imaginative phenomena.
Yeah, and without giving away our plans here, we're actually creating a show that addresses things along those lines. I'm not going to say any more. It's going to be a very interesting special show, but it will talk a great deal about the Sasquatch, and I think I better leave it at that. I don't want to give away the show on that one, so because Tom and I are working very hard on that particular one, and it's going to be fascinating, but it'll highlight the differences between what you just mentioned and what we were talking about.
Okay, well, switching gears a little bit, this is a question that I have about, and I'm not talking about hoaxers out there necessarily. I'm talking about amateurs that have good intentions, amateur researchers that have good intentions, but don't really know too much about Bigfoot other than some of the obvious things, that, you can find prints, you can maybe find hair samples, etc. But do you think that sometimes when you have amateurs that go out there trying to find Bigfoot, it actually is a detriment to the study of this creature, or to the perception of this creature that people have, and it adds to the skepticism that other people have from outsiders on two levels. First, if they go into the field and they don't really know exactly what they're supposed to be looking for, they might miss evidence. So they'll come back and people will say, oh, well, you didn't find anything. That's more proof that Bigfoot doesn't exist. And then the second part of that would be that if they do go out, they don't know exactly what they're supposed to be looking for, and they think that they find evidence and it turns out to be not evidence, then that leads outsiders and skeptics to say, well, hey, like what you found isn't really any evidence of Bigfoot. So I guess where I'm going with this question is, do you think that it's probably a bad idea for some amateurs that don't really know what they're going out there to be looking for? They don't have this 50 years of experience that you have. Is that maybe a detriment and maybe adds to the skepticism that outsiders have?
Yeah. I mean, well, now, first of all, there's a lot of great folks out there that go looking, and I encourage them to do that. If you don't know where to get started, go to Amazon and get my book, Bigfoot Fieldwork 101, and that'll give you a foundation for what to do. The little bit of equipment you need. I mean, a low monetary startup, very low. I mean, it's not, I don't expect people to go out and spend a bunch of money. It's just not worth it, especially if you get out there and you find that you really don't want to do all this kind of stuff. So you spend a little bit of money. That you can properly collect things. But the problem isn't so much with, people going out and doing this. The problem is all the junk that's out there online and on YouTube and everything else by people who think they're experts, and they spout a lot of nonsense more based on their own beliefs and what other people have put out, so they're creating these theories based on, X number of generations of videos of junk that they've watched. You know what I mean? Now, it's very easy to go out and miss things. Tom can tell you. He went to an area, he found some stuff, and I asked a simple question, did you look for tracks? He didn't look for tracks, and went back and found things. So it's very easy to not know or think at the moment what you're looking for. But also, the big problem is, if you find something you think is evidence, don't get on. I'm very leery about people going on Facebook and YouTube and everywhere else and screaming from the rooftops that they found this evidence when it's probably not evidence or it's something else. Good people just be better informed.
Yes. And Will, you've heard me say this before, and Brian, I think you have too, is, I look at some of these YouTube or Bigfoot shows, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, if you want to find Bigfoot, you need to go where they are. But in order to go where they are, you need to know where they are. And that was a couple of years ago when I sent you, I can't believe it's been that long, but I sent you something that looked like it was a little bit odd. I sent it to you and I sent it to one other guy who we both know. And both of you independently replied back, yeah, and you gave me some pointers on it. Mm-hmm. And the obvious thing was, Tom, go look for footprints. Go look on the ground.
Yeah.
And I did within 60 seconds. Myself and the friend of mine that I was with were finding footprints all over the place, as well as some kind of twisted branches. But Brian, you had a really good point, and that is, 2 weeks ago, I went out to an area, and I'm not going to give out all the details, but again, it goes back to, excuse me, you need to go where they are. And I was up with a couple of people that are, we all know them, and these guys are very, very knowledgeable, very expert, both in the woods, but also, very much into the topic. And we spent an entire day in an area, and we may do a follow-up, I'm not sure. But anyway, long story short, I felt it was a bust. But at the end of the day, we decided to go to one final area and vet it. And we did. And it's still kind of a bust. But as we were leaving the area, then we discovered the creatures, and we got all kinds of, we got sightings, we got evidence, and it's one of those rare cases, very rare, where we could smell them. And that was actually what triggered us, was this powerful, offensive odor that none of us could identify. It wasn't rotting flesh. It wasn't anything we'd ever smelled before, but it really smelled like a kind of an assault to your olfactory system. And it just ramped up from there. So anyway, that's just a quick comment on, you gotta go where they are, and you gotta know where they are.
Well, in other situations too, like the guy we've been dealing with in the Southwest, when he first ran across a lot of tracks, in fact, he sent me more stuff yesterday, including handprints, very good ones. He was contacting me, asking me if they were human or Sasquatch, and largely because of the size of the prints. They were juvenile tracks. Well, one of the main things to look at in that situation was the material they were made in, and I asked him what his height and weight was. He's 6 foot tall, weighs 200 pounds. He barely made an impression in this material that they were made in. The footprints were 4 inches deep. So, you have to look at those circumstances. The tracks were very good, very clear. I'm not sure, Tom, did you post any of those on the website or?
No, I have not. We have the tracks, we have the casts. They're excellent. And maybe down the road, I might post them on the website if we get them to come on and do an interview.
Okay, I know we did. I can't remember if we talked about those last time we interviewed him. Maybe we didn't, but anyway, he's found. There are probably hundreds of tracks. up to, I think he said 7 individuals. The smallest track was 3 inches long. He found an adult 15 inches long, but most of them are juveniles. So, fascinating situation, and he's, had heard more things going on. Anyway, so moving on from that.
Yeah. Well, kind of a sort of a follow-up, but also kind of a segue too. I have 2 questions related to that about Patterson and Giblin themselves. Because Tom made a great point about you have to know where they are. So that's exactly what Patterson and Giblin did, is that they had heard reports in that area.
Well, it wasn't just hearing reports in the area. They were told specifically. Now, the events there were a sequence of events that led up to that. It wasn't just a random check based on reports in the area. Al Hodgson had gotten a report from a group of loggers that they found 3 sets of tracks after leaving their work area one day, and I think it was around August of '67. So Al Hodgson, who owned the local 5 and Dime in Willow Creek, which was kind of the focal point when anybody would go anywhere, because that's a long ways up to Bluff Creek. They would come down to Willow Creek and do whatever. They told him. He called John Green in British Columbia and said, hey, there's a fresh track find. Green and DeHinden and a dog handler flew down to Orleans in a plane to go look at the tracks. By the time they got there, it had rained, so the tracks weren't very good, so they went back to British Columbia. Hodgson wasn't aware of how well Roger Patterson and John Green knew each other. He didn't know they were friends. So he waited till Green left. Then he talked to Mrs. Patterson, because Patterson and Giblin were at Mount St. Helens in the field, saying, hey, there was a fresh track find here. If they want to come down and look at it. And Patterson had been there before, and cast tracks in that region. So, they were in between jobs. They hot-footed it down there and just happened to, come into the situation to get that film. So it wasn't just a random check on an area. I mean, we have plenty of places where, we can go into where there's been activity, maybe find stuff, maybe not.
Right, exactly. And I guess the second, well, not really a question, but just a comment about Patterson and Giblin is that some of the people out there seem to think that they were like professional filmmakers when in fact they were construction workers.
Yeah,
right?
they were construction workers.
Yeah,
Patterson spent $25 to rent that camera, and he couldn't even afford to pay for the camera rental, so he spent a couple days in jail. I've actually seen the court documents on that.
Wow. Now, did Giblin? I know that Patterson died at a young age.
In 1972, yeah.
But they were always on good terms together, though, too, right?
Yeah, they were friends.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Can you tell us the story about Tom Slick and his expeditions to didn't he go out looking for the Yeti, right?
Well, he backed financially some of these efforts. Originally it was with, the Yeti in the Himalayas, and then the Pacific Northwest expedition on the West Coast here, and that was, John Green, Rene DeHinden, Bob Titmus, and a few others. Outside of that, I don't know. Nobody knows what they produced so much, because the items that, after Slick died in a plane crash, all the stuff that he had apparently vanished. So, what was actually collected is unknown. And Green and DeHinden didn't really talk about it a lot. They were kind of upset because he replaced them with Peter Byrne, who did nothing with the project.
Right, exactly. I guess a couple other questions real quick. Maybe this might be the last one I have written down, but what aspect, and this is both for you and Tom, what aspect of these creatures, maybe single aspect or couple aspects, would you like to know more about, even with your 50 years of experience? I mean, you know everything there is to know about footprints, about hair samples, etc. Is there any other thing that you want to know more about, or just know in general?
Well, for me, I don't know everything about all those areas. I know quite a bit about those subjects, but certainly not everything. For me personally, it's the physical aspects and behaviors are the two biggies, but across the board on the subject. How about you, Tom?
Yeah. Well, right. So I'm quite a bit behind you on that. I want to comment that as much as any of us can know, well, would you agree that at this juncture we really don't have what you might consider an expert on the topic, but instead we have people like yourself who are exceedingly knowledgeable on it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. People that are knowledgeable, and not very many, to be honest. There are some, but absolutely no experts. And those who call themselves an expert, I could very quickly prove them wrong in that. And I know there are a few, people out there who call themselves experts to the public, but they are not. Right.
And I want to say, in answer to Brian's question, for me, it's I can't really pin it down on a single thing that I'd like to know. I'd like to know more, and I gotta say it's pretty exhilarating. Talking about the episode from 2 weeks ago, to encounter the creatures. Now it can be exhilarating, both good and bad. I mean, I'll be honest with you. You're on high alert. Your situational awareness goes up 1,000%. Right?
It does. And I'll tell you, even situations like this current one going on in the Southwest, we've gotten a picture of a juvenile from down there that we're not allowed to show yet. We don't have permission for any of that. Tons and tons of footprints and markings, other things that are going on. And for me, it's kind of an interesting ride because I just like to see what's going to happen next, especially with this much evidence being left behind. I want to see what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Exactly.
Behavior is everything.
Yeah. I mean, the two main things that kind of still perplex me are the tree breaks and the or structures, perhaps, and the psychology of these creatures and behaviors.
Well, for me, any structures are that's still out there someplace. Because I haven't seen any of that anywhere on the West Coast, and I've been in a lot of places over a lot of years that have never seen anything like that. Now, the breaks were something that Bob Titmus talked about, and it was found even before him. But he told me that he would be tracking these creatures in the Bluff Creek area, and, when they would be entering forested areas, he would find these breaks, and they were much smaller than what I started discovering in the early 90s. But when I first started finding those, it was obvious that it was not anything natural or anything else doing it because of the location and the way the trees were broken. And once I recognized that, I started finding them. So, I mean, and they're not just everywhere. They're in places where the creatures have been active. And my native friends told me that they were used from their knowledge, for three things. One is a marking for territorial issues. One is directional markers for the rest of the group when the leader of the group was going to another feeding area. And the third one was to mark areas of high human activity, as basically as a warning for them to stay out of that area.
Exactly. And when I say psychology too, it would be great if we could get a psychologist on here, because one of the things that really interests me in doing research is how big. They're obviously intelligent, right? Mm-hmm. But it would be interesting to see a comparison between like one of their brains and other primates, because I know that they say that chimps and orangutans and even gorillas only have like, I think, a third of the size of the brain that humans have, or the functionality, I should say, maybe, of what humans have. But I would just be curious to have somebody maybe speculate on that, and particularly the psychology, like why they do what they do. I mean, you kind of give a very good answer, which is they're looking for food all the time.
Right.
But there might be other instances where, okay, why do they in some cases have more, like why in some cases do they try to avoid us, but in other times and cases they are more threatening and like banging on walls and things like that?
Well, brain size is related. It's a ratio to body size. Their brain, animals might have a very large brain, but compared to their overall body size, like with all primates, the human brain is the largest among all the primates because of its size compared to our body size. You know what I'm saying? In other words, let's say, and I don't remember off the top of my head, what the size of a gorilla's brain is, but, because they have a large body, their brain is smaller, the ratio is smaller, but the brain actually might be larger than ours. You know what I'm saying? But ours is larger compared to our body size. And then there's some things that go into it. It's one of those videos where they discuss that and how tightly packed the neurons are and things like that make ours a superior brain.
Brian, you hit on a really good question that I've actually pondered over the past, and that is predominantly the creatures are trying to avoid human contact. They try to conceal their existence, or at least conceal their presence from us. And then in a kind of a contradiction to that, I think that's what you're saying, is that they will do things that go against that. They will bang on the side of the house or the cabin. They will do a display where they present themselves to humans. And that is a really good question of behavior and psychology.
Well, I think you're talking apples and oranges there. Most of the time they're going to conceal themselves from humans, for the obvious threat situation. Now, when they're doing those behaviors, that's something entirely different. Banging on the house, they may be trying to ascertain how many people are in the house. That could be a hunting behavior. They're not trying to conceal themselves, but that's a hunting behavior. Same with displays. That's a territorial issue. In those kind of situations, those are different functions, but the main function is to keep out of range of humans for the most part. But when they're doing those things, those are for very specific tasks.
Yeah, and it seems like there's a general perception out there that the creatures are, because they are very, they're adept at being near us, but concealed. We have no idea they're there. So there's a general perception that, my gosh, these things just want to remain hidden, and so that's not always the case.
Well, one of the biggest problems that humans have, and you see it more and more all the time, and it's really a dumb thing because we're smarter than that, we should be thinking more than that, we want to lump, groups into little boxes. It's easier for us to understand because we're bombarded with so much information nowadays, that we want to compartmentalize things so it's easier for us to, move from one situation to the next and deal with it accordingly. But you can't just lump groups into boxes like that. These guys, when they're doing certain behaviors, individuals are going to be individuals, and groups, one behavior, one group is going to be different than another group, and those can change too from day to day depending on other variables. So, folks, don't just lump groups into categories. It's not the way things actually work.
Will, I have a great follow-up to that, which is not to lump groups into boxes. So from a psychological standpoint, I wonder what the behaviors of a group that maybe encounters humans for the very first time is compared to Sasquatches that have had multiple sort of sightings, or if you want to say encounters with humans, like the differences between sort of an ingenue group and a more experienced group, what the differences of behavior would be.
Well, again, that kind of depends on, the alpha of the group. And Tom can tell you also there's a group, and I'm not going to say where, that we've been looking at for a while, that over time their behavior has radically changed. and it looks like that's the alphas in the group, or the groups in that area. It's a region. Have had a radical change where they become extremely aggressive, where in the past they weren't. So, whether that's, it's, I don't think in that area it's new to human contact. And I'll tell you something, in areas that are very remote, the more remote the area, the more aggressive the behavior seems to be. So when they've had less exposure to humans, they're more aggressive. If they've had more experience, they tend to not be as aggressive, or, if it's opportunistic, they may be. But in this case, apparently, because of the location, it's an area where they've had obvious human exposure, plenty of it over time. But the only factor that we can come to or think about is that the alphas have probably changed, and there's a much more aggressive tendency among them.
Right, because in remote areas, maybe they perceive any kind of human encounter as being a threat to their territory, I'd imagine.
Well, it could be less, because there's less humans there, they might think they can get away with it easier. Where there's more people around, it's a little more dangerous, to try those kinds of things. They're more wary in those conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're in a very remote area, let's say, northern Canada or Alaska, far away from any populated areas, the behavior is going to be ramped up. Oftentimes we get all these reports that say this, because there's no real repercussions for them, to be more cautious.
Yeah, and if two groups were maybe in the same area, do you think it could be like almost a similar situation where a group that is in a remote area, and then you have not humans, but maybe another group come in? Do you think that they might be more aggressive, or how do they kind of alert each other as to their presence?
Well, it's usually audible, usually screams, things like that. One group will let another one know it's there, or if it's, one group is encroaching on its territory, the group that lives there might, let it know, say, hey, there's a group that lives here. But then the outcome is going to depend on which alpha is more dominant.
Right. Would they kind of meet each other, or would they just send vocals? Like, would they come across and get close to each other, or would it just be more of a vocalization type of indication that they're there?
Depends on the temperament of the group that's encroaching on the first one. If they're just, accidentally come to an area where there's a group inhabiting that area, it might be more standoffish. If the group that's coming in is more aggressive, wanting to take over that area, then there's going to be a closer encounter, most likely.
Right, and it might have to do something with the types as well.
And then again, depends on which alpha is stronger.
Mm-hmm. What about geography, like in terms of maybe the Pacific Northwest versus, somewhere on the East Coast? Would it be the same thing as, just whichever alpha is the more dominant?
Most likely, yeah, and you're going to get some variations, but that's most likely what's going on.
And to kind of lead back to the beginning of this discussion, this might lead to like chest bumping and things like that, and maybe kind of not necessarily a physical altercation, but just more of a, like a louder vocalization, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, we've had reports of people hearing groups encounter one another, and very much like chimps and other large primates, there's a lot of noise, a lot of things going on. One particular one comes to mind where there was all this vocals going on between the two groups, and then one of the alphas, apparently the dominant one, made a loud roar, its presence known, and that stopped all the agitation between the groups, and they passed each other peacefully. Well, fellas, we're just about out of time for this segment. Any final thoughts or questions? I have a quick comment, and that is I really want to thank our audience out there with their excellent questions. Those are, they keep us on our toes, they keep us thinking, and you guys we just love answering your questions. Yeah, you folks are great. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate our listeners, and keep the questions and great thoughts coming.
Yeah, for example, that question about the elephants, I never even thought about that before, but that was an excellent question. So as Tom says, it does keep us thinking and sort of on our feet, so appreciate it.
It does. And folks, again, thanks for listening, and stay tuned for the next segment.
Bigfoot resurfaces in Wisconsin. The world's most famous hairy hominid makes a menacing return in America's Northeast. After a recent spat of Australian Yowie sightings, FT-134 paragraph 7, America's own hairy hominid has made a dramatic return with the sighting in Wisconsin, in northeast USA, somewhat off the beaten track for these elusive shadow creatures. At about 5:15 a.m. on 28 March, James Hughes was driving on his paper delivery route down County Highway H, about 1.5 miles, 4.5 kilometers, from Cranton, when he noticed something standing in the ditch on the opposite, south, side of the road. Hughes initially took it to be a man, but soon noticed that there was something wrong. It was about 8 feet, 2.5 meters tall, and covered with dark gray, shaggy hair, in clumps and knotted. Hughes also noticed lighter patches of honey-colored hair, the largest being on its left side. The creature's head was all hair and over a foot wide. 2 spots were visible where its eyes would have been, but Hughes was unable to see any other facial features. The overall effect was one of a miniature King Kong. In its left hand, the beast held what Hughes first took to be a goat, but later he wasn't sure. As he approached, the creature turned slowly to look at him, at which point Hughes drove away as fast as he could. "You better believe I was scared," he told a reporter. "That creature could have tipped that car upside down and thrown it into a ditch. It was that big." The next day, Hughes filed a report with the local sheriff's office. A deputy accompanied Hughes to the scene, but they were unable to find footprints or any other evidence. The nearest wood is 75 yards, 69 meters, from the spot. Yet there were no tracks in the soft-plowed field between it and the road, or in any adjacent field of hard ground. It's thought that the creature would have crossed this field. The surrounding area holds 2 Indian burial mound groups as well as high-power transmission lines, so plenty to keep the alternative, non-physical explanations flowing. Since Hughes' sighting, there have been numerous other searches of the area, including one with specially trained Bigfoot sniffer dogs, but to no avail. There have been no further witness reports. "We have no goats reported missing or any other types of small animals," said Captain Mark Catanach. "I'm not sure what we could do. I don't know that there's ever been any indication, at least that I have been told, that there's any danger to the public." Cryptozoologist Richard Hendricks noticed that Hughes' creature matches other descriptions of the so-called eastern Bigfoot, which tends to have longer fur, 6 to 8 inches, 16 to 22 centimeters long, than the Pacific Northwest Sasquatch, and a distinct lack of facial features. Parallels have also been drawn to the Momo sighting of 1972, in which a shaggy, haired Bigfoot was seen carrying a dog under its arm in Louisiana, Missouri, and the creature that attacked Kristen Van Acker near Monroe, Michigan, 1965. From 14 Times, FT-135, June 2000.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creek Devil. If you or anyone you know has had an encounter with these creatures, please contact us at williamjevning@yahoo.com. That's William, Jevning @yahoo.com. All communication is confidential. Join us for another program next week. And until then, keep your eyes open out